You think you're being kind. You think you're being good. But let me tell you something about your endless need to please everyone. It's the most spectacular form of lying you'll ever commit, not just to them, but to yourself. And the real tragedy? You already know this. Deep down, in that place you refuse to look, you know exactly what you're doing. But I just want people to be happy, you say. Beautiful, noble, complete nonsense. You don't want them to be happy. You want them to approve of you. There's a difference, and that difference is destroying you from the inside out. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you smile when you want to scream, you're not being selfless. You're being a coward. Look, here's what Jung understood that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. The person you're really trying to please doesn't even exist. It's a phantom, a projection, a desperate fantasy of who you think they need you to be. You're performing for an empty theater, exhausting yourself for an audience that's not even watching. They're too busy performing for their own phantoms. You know what happens to people who spend their lives pleasing everyone. They wake up at 50, 60, 70 years old and realize they've never actually lived. They've been a walking costume, a pleasant fiction, a human-shaped apology for existing. And then, here's the beautiful irony. They discover that all those people they twisted themselves into knots for, they don't even remember. They moved on. They were never paying that much attention anyway. So let me ask you something, and I want you to feel this question in your gut. What would actually happen if you stopped? Right now, today. What if you took all that energy you pour into managing other people's emotions and turned it inward? What if you finally asked yourself what you want? Oh, but that's selfish. There it is. There's the voice. That's not your voice, by the way. That's your mother's voice, your father's voice, your teacher's voice, society's voice, everyone's voice but yours. And you've confused it with conscience. You've confused fear with virtue. Jung said it perfectly. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become who you truly are when you're busy being everyone else's idea of who you should be. You're not even in the building. You're outside, pressing your face against the window of your own life, watching some stranger live it for you. Let's talk about what's really happening here. When you please everyone, you're not actually pleasing anyone. You're creating a sophisticated system of mutual deception. They pretend to need what you pretend to offer. You pretend to be happy, giving what they pretend satisfies them. It's a dance of shadows, and everybody knows the steps, but nobody hears the music. You've become so good at reading the room that you've forgotten how to read yourself. Someone walks in, and within seconds, you're calculating, what do they need me to be? Funny? Serious? Supportive? Critical? You're a human chameleon, changing colors so fast you don't even remember what your original color was. And here's the kicker. They can smell it on you. People know when you're performing. They might not say it, but they feel it. That weird, uncomfortable energy when someone's being nice, but not real. Remember that friend who always agrees with everything? The one who never has a strong opinion, never rocks the boat, never says what they really think. How much do you actually trust them? How close do you actually feel to them? That's you. That's what you've become. A pleasant nobody, a helpful ghost, a smiling void. But people count on me. Do they? Or do they count on the role you've been playing? There's a difference between being genuinely helpful and being addicted to being needed. One comes from strength, the other from emptiness. One builds real relationships, the other builds dependencies. And you know which one you've been doing. Jung understood something profound about this. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So what irritates you? The selfish person who always puts themselves first? The one who says no without explaining? The one who doesn't care what people think? Congratulations! You've just met your shadow! The part of you that you buried under a mountain of politeness and people-pleasing. You hate them because they're doing what you're terrified to do, exist without apology. They're taking up space without asking permission. They're having opinions without checking if everyone agrees. They're being themselves without running it through a committee first. And every time you see them, something in you screams, "That could be me. That should be me." But instead, you've chosen the path of the perpetual apology. You apologize for your opinions. You apologize for your needs. You apologize for your existence. "Sorry, but" has become your mantra. "I don't want to bother you, but" is your opening line. You've turned yourself into a walking disclaimer, a human terms and conditions agreement that nobody reads but everyone scrolls past. Let me paint you a picture of your typical day. You wake up, and before your feet hit the floor, you're already thinking about everyone else's needs. Your partner needs you to be cheerful. Your kids need you to be patient. Your boss needs you to be productive. Your friends need you to be available. Where are you in this equation? Nowhere. You're the invisible hand moving all the pieces, the ghost in the machine, the person who exists only in relation to what others need. You check your phone. Messages, each one a demand disguised as a request. Can you help with this? Are you free for that? Would you mind doing this favor? And what do? You say yes, not because you want to, not because you have the time or energy, but because saying no feels like drowning. The anxiety that floods your system at the thought of disappointing someone is so overwhelming that you'll do anything to avoid it, even if it means disappointing yourself. Especially if it means disappointing yourself. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's exactly why you keep running. Accepting yourself completely means accepting the parts that aren't nice, the parts that are selfish, angry, resentful, tired, fed up, the parts that want to scream enough at the top of your lungs, the parts that want to burn every bridge just to feel the heat. You're terrified of these parts, so you bury them under an avalanche of helpfulness. But here's what happens when you bury parts of yourself. They don't die. They ferment. They turn into resentment, anxiety, depression, mysterious illnesses that doctors can't explain. Your body keeps the score of every yes that should have been a no, every smile that should have been a boundary, every favor that should have been a refusal. You're probably sick right now, not necessarily with anything dramatic, just that low-level, constant exhaustion, that heaviness in your chest, that tension in your shoulders, that feeling of being overwhelmed by the simplest tasks. Your body is trying to tell you what your mind won't admit. You're dying a slow death by politeness. But I don't know how to change. Of course you don't. You've been playing this role for so long. You think it's who you are. You think if you stop pleasing everyone, there'll be nothing left. Just a void where a person should be. And in a way, you're right. There will be a void. But that's not the end. That's the beginning. That's where the real you has been waiting all along. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." But you're still letting what happened to you run the show. Maybe it was a critical parent who made you feel like love was conditional on performance. Maybe it was a chaotic childhood where keeping everyone happy meant survival. Maybe it was just the slow accumulation of messages that your needs don't matter. Your wants are selfish. Your boundaries are mean. Whatever it was, you internalized the message. I am only valuable when I'm useful to others. I am only lovable when I'm making everyone else comfortable. I am only safe when everyone approves of me. And now you're an adult, still operating on childhood software. Still trying to earn love that should be freely given. Still trying to prove worth that should be inherent. You've created a prison where you're both the guard and the prisoner. Every time someone asks something of you, you lock yourself in tighter. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you add another bar. Every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, you throw away another key. And the worst part? Everyone else is walking around free while you're serving a life sentence for the crime of wanting to be liked. Let's talk about what you're really afraid of. It's not actually about making people unhappy. It's about what happens next. The confrontation, the guilt trip, the silent treatment, the possibility that they might gasp, not like you anymore. You've built your entire identity on being the person everyone can count on. And if you stop, who are you? Just another selfish person in a world full of selfish people? Just another disappointment in a world full of disappointments? Here's what Jung knew that you're still learning. Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. You're surrounded by people and dying of loneliness because none of them know who you really are. How could they? You don't even know who you really are. You've been too busy being who they need you to be. You've become a master of the surface relationship. Pleasant conversations about nothing. Helpful gestures that cost you everything and mean nothing. Connections that go exactly as deep as your willingness to perform and not 1 inch deeper. You're the social equivalent of small talk, nice enough, forgettable, ultimately meaningless. And the people in your life? They've gotten comfortable with the arrangement. Why wouldn't they? They get a personal assistant, therapist, and cheerleader all rolled into one, and all they have to do is exist. They've been trained by your behavior to expect your constant availability, your endless flexibility, your infinite capacity to absorb their problems while never mentioning your own. Try this experiment. The next time someone starts dumping their problems on you without asking, the next time someone assumes you'll rearrange your life for their convenience, the next time someone treats your time like it's less valuable than theirs, say no. Just no. Not because. Not, I'm sorry, but no. Just no. And watch what happens. First, they'll be shook. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Don't you care about their feelings? Then comes the guilt trip. All the times they've been there for you, have they? All the ways you're letting them down. All the reasons you're being unreasonable, selfish, not yourself. And that last one, you're not yourself. That's the most telling. Because you're right, you're not yourself. You're finally, for once in your life, being yourself. And it terrifies them. Jung observed, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Yet you've been trying to wear everyone else's shoes, walking in everyone else's path, living everyone else's life. No wonder your feet hurt. No wonder you can barely move. No wonder every step feels like agony. You know what's really happening when you please everyone. You're not actually helping them. You're enabling their inability to handle disappointment. You're protecting them from the growth that comes from hearing no. You're robbing them of the opportunity to solve their own problems, to feel their own feelings, to live their own lives. Your people-pleasing isn't generous, it's patronizing. You're treating everyone like children who can't handle reality. And what about your children if you have them? What are you teaching them by example? That their needs don't matter, that love must be earned through service, that boundaries are selfish, that authenticity is dangerous? You're raising the next generation of people-pleasers, passing on the dysfunction like a family heirloom nobody wants, but everyone keeps. But won't I end up alone? Maybe. And maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. Maybe you need to lose the relationships that were built on you being a doormat. Maybe you need to disappoint the people who only value you for what you can do for them. Maybe you need to find out who actually loves you versus who just loves using you. Jung said, where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, there love is lacking. Your relationships aren't based on love, they're based on power. The power dynamic where you give and they take, where you serve and they expect, where you diminish yourself so they can feel bigger. That's not love. That's not even friendship. That's just a sophisticated form of emotional slavery. The truth is, the people who really matter won't leave when you start having boundaries. They'll respect you more. They'll trust you more. They'll actually get to know you instead of the performance you've been giving. And the ones who can't handle the real you, they were never your people anyway. They were just audience members who got too comfortable with the show. You've spent so long being everything to everyone that you've forgotten the simple joy of being something to yourself. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it would make someone else happy, not because it would keep the peace, not because it was expected, but just because it brought you joy. You probably can't remember. That's how far gone you are. Here's what's going to happen when you start saying no. Your anxiety will spike. Your inner critic will go into overdrive. Every people-pleasing alarm in your system will start screaming. You'll feel selfish, guilty, wrong. You'll want to take it back, apologize, return to the comfortable dysfunction. Don't. This is withdrawal. This is what it feels like when you stop feeding an addiction. Because that's what people-pleasing is, an addiction. Instead of a substance, you're addicted to approval. Instead of a high, you chase the absence of conflict. Instead of withdrawal symptoms, you get anxiety and guilt. And just like any addiction, it's progressive. You need more and more approval to feel okay. You have to work harder and harder to avoid conflict. The cost keeps going up, but the payoff keeps going down. Jung understood. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You've been unconsciously following a script written by your fears and then calling it your personality. You think you're just naturally giving, naturally selfless, naturally accommodating. No, you're naturally terrified. And you built an entire identity around managing that terror. Let's talk about anger. You know, that emotion you pretend you don't have, that feeling you've labeled as bad and locked away. Every time you smile when someone disrespects your time, that's anger. Every time you say, it's fine, when it's not fine, that's anger. Every time you do a favor you don't want to do, that's anger. You're not a peaceful person. You're a pressure cooker with a smile painted on the lid. And one day, it's going to explode. Maybe it already has. Those moments when you snap over something small. When you have a meltdown over a minor inconvenience. When you find yourself raging at strangers in traffic. That's not about the traffic. That's about the 1,000 times you swallowed your truth to keep someone else comfortable. That's your shadow, demanding to be seen. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls, Jung wrote. And that's exactly what you're doing with your people-pleasing. You're avoiding your soul. You're running from the profound responsibility of being yourself. Because being yourself means making choices. It means disappointing people. It means being disliked. It means standing alone sometimes. And you'd rather do anything than face that. But here's what you don't realize. You're already alone. You're alone in a crowd of people who don't really know you. You're alone in relationships built on false pretenses. You're alone in your head, managing everyone's emotions while neglecting your own. The isolation you're so afraid of, you're already living it. You're just decorating it with the illusion of connection. Real connection requires real presence. It requires showing up as yourself, not as who you think others need you to be. It requires the courage to be disliked for who you are, rather than liked for who you're not. It requires what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, separate from the collective expectations and projections. You think you're being humble, but you're actually being arrogant. Who are you to decide what others can and can't handle? Who are you to protect grown adults from the reality of who you are? Who are you to rob people of the opportunity to have a real relationship with you? Your people-pleasing isn't modest. It's playing God. You're trying to control how others see you, feel about you, react to you. That's not kindness. That's manipulation. Every time you lie about how you feel to avoid conflict, you're manipulating. Every time you pretend to agree to avoid judgment, you're manipulating. Every time you hide your needs to seem low maintenance, you're manipulating. You've become so good at it that you don't even realize you're doing it. You think you're being nice. You're actually being fake. Jung said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity." When was the last time you acted from inner necessity instead of outer pressure? When was the last time you followed your instincts instead of your conditioning? When was the last time you played instead of performed? You've forgotten how to play because play requires authenticity. You can't play while monitoring everyone's reactions. You can't be spontaneous while calculating the social cost of every move. You can't experience joy while managing everyone else's emotions. You've turned your life into a job where you're always on the clock, always in uniform, always in character. Let me tell you what happens to people who never stop pleasing others. They become bitter. Not overnight, but slowly, surely, inevitably. The resentment builds up like plaque in your spiritual arteries. Every suppressed no, every fake smile, every sacrificed desire adds another layer. And one day, you wake up hating everyone. Not because they're bad people, but because you've given them everything and kept nothing for yourself. You'll recognize these people. They're the martyrs. The ones who do everything for everyone and then resent everyone for it. The ones who give until they're empty and then blame others for their emptiness. The ones who say things like, "After all I've done for you, and nobody appreciates me, and I give and give and give and give and nothing back." That's your future if you don't change. That's where the people-pleasing path leads. But there's another way. Jung described it. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. You've been dreaming that if you're good enough, helpful enough, selfless enough, you'll finally feel worthy. Dreaming that if you please everyone, you'll finally be safe. Dreaming that if you never rock the boat, you'll never have to swim. Time to wake up. Time to look inside and face what's there. Not the performance, not the persona, not the people pleaser, but the real you. The one with needs, wants, desires, boundaries, opinions, feelings. The one you've been treating like a shameful secret. The one you've been apologizing for your entire life. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing everyone to like you is the moment you become truly likable. Not to everyone, never to everyone, but to the right people. Your people. The ones who want the real you, not the performance. The ones who respect boundaries instead of pushing them. The ones who give as much as they take. The ones who love you, not what you can do for them. Think about the last time someone set a clear boundary with you. Not in a mean way, but in a clear, unapologetic way. "I can't do that. That doesn't work for me. I need to think about it." How did you feel? Maybe surprised at first, but then relieved? Respectful? There's something refreshing about people who know their limits and honor them. That could be you. That should be you. You've confused love with service. You think the more you do for people, the more they'll love you. But love isn't a transaction. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's not something you earn by exhausting yourself. Real love, the kind that sustains and nourishes, comes to you when you're being yourself, not when you're being useful. Jung knew this. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But it's not just a privilege, it's a responsibility. You owe it to yourself to stop the performance. You owe it to others to stop the deception. You owe it to life to show up as yourself instead of this carefully constructed phantom. What would your life look like if you stopped pleasing everyone? If you said no without explaining? If you stated your needs without apologizing? If you set boundaries without guilt? If you chose authenticity over approval? If you finally chose yourself? I'll tell you what it would look like. Messy at first, uncomfortable, foreign. Like wearing new shoes that haven't been broken in yet. People would be confused. Some would be angry. Some would try to pull you back into your old patterns. Some would leave, and in the space they left behind, something new would grow. Something real. Something yours. You'd wake up one morning and realize you're not exhausted before the day even begins. You'd check your phone and feel free to respond or not respond. You'd make plans based on what you actually want to do, not what you think you should do. You'd have energy because you're not leaking it in 1,000 different directions. You'd have clarity because you're not clouding it with everyone else's expectations. But how do I start? You start where you are. You start small. You start with one no, one boundary, one moment of authenticity. You start by catching yourself mid-performance and choosing something different. You start by feeling the discomfort and not running from it. You start by treating your own needs as if they matter, because they do. Here's a practical exercise. For 1 week, before you say yes to anything, pause. Just pause. Feel what's happening in your body. Is there a tightness in your chest? A knot in your stomach? A heaviness in your shoulders? That's your body telling you the truth. Your mind won't admit. That's your authentic self trying to be heard over the noise of your conditioning. You'll mess up. You'll swing too far the other way. You'll be harsh when you're meant to be firm. You'll be selfish when you're meant to be self-caring. That's okay. You're learning a new way of being. You're undoing decades of conditioning. You're rebuilding yourself from the ground up. Of course, it's going to be messy. The people in your life will react. Some will push back hard. They've gotten used to your compliance and they won't give it up without a fight. Some will guilt trip you. Some will rage at you. Some will tell you changed. You're not yourself. You're being selfish. Good. Let them. Their reactions are not your responsibility. Their emotions are not your problem to solve. Their comfort is not your job to ensure. Jung said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Your piecing has been a way to avoid your own darkness, your own selfishness, your own needs, your own difficult emotions. But in avoiding your darkness, you've become powerless against theirs. You've become a dumping ground for everyone else's shadows while pretending you don't have any of your own. Time to claim your darkness. Time to admit you're not always nice. Time to acknowledge you have needs that inconvenience others. Time to accept that you're a human being, not a human doing. Time to stop apologizing for taking up space in your own life. Here's what nobody tells you about boundaries. They're not walls, they're doors. They're not about keeping people out, they're about choosing who to let in. They're not about being mean, they're about being clear. When you have no boundaries, everyone's a stranger because nobody knows where you really stand. When you have boundaries, you can have real intimacy because people know where they stand with you. You think you're connecting with people, but you're just colliding with them. Without boundaries, there's no definition, no shape, no form. You're just this amorphous blob of availability, spreading yourself so thin you disappear. No wonder you feel invisible. You've made yourself invisible by trying to be everything to everyone. The most powerful word in your vocabulary should be no. Not because you want to be difficult, but because you want to be honest. Every authentic no makes space for an authentic yes. Every boundary you set clarifies who you are. Every time you disappoint someone else to avoid disappointing yourself, you become more real. But let's be honest about something else. Part of you likes being needed. Part of you gets a hit of self-worth every time someone depends on you. Part of you feels important when you're the one everyone turns to. That's the shadow side of people-pleasing. It's not all self-sacrifice. There's ego in there too. There's a superiority in being the one who gives while others take. Jung understood. We cannot change anything until we accept it. So accept it. Accept that you're a people pleaser. Accept that you're addicted to approval. Accept that you're addicted to approval. Accept that you've built your life on a foundation of fear. Accept that you've been lying to yourself and everyone else. Accept it all. Not to stay there, but to finally move forward. Because here's the secret. The moment you accept what is, you create space for what could be. The moment you stop running from yourself, you can start running toward yourself. The moment you admit the performance isn't working, you can drop the act and start living. You've spent years, maybe decades, perfecting this performance. You know exactly how to read a room, how to morph into what's needed, how to disappear into helpfulness. Those aren't skills to be ashamed of. They're survival strategies that served you once. But what helps you survive isn't always what helps you thrive. The very things that kept you safe are now keeping you small. Think about a plant that's outgrown its pot. It survived in that small container for a while, roots wrapped around themselves, growth stunted but alive. But at some point, staying in that pot means dying. The very thing that once contained and protected it now constrains and kills it. That's you. That's your people-pleasing. Time to break the pot. It's time to risk being disliked. Time to risk disappointing people. Time to risk standing out instead of blending in. Time to risk being yourself in a world that's been quite comfortable with your performance. Time to risk everything you've built on the shaky foundation of people-pleasing and build something new on the solid ground of authenticity. Will you lose people? Yes. Will it hurt? Yes. Will it question yourself? Yes. Will you question yourself? Yes. Will you want to go back to the old way? Yes. Do it anyway. Because on the other side of that loss is freedom. On the other side of that hurt is healing. On the other side of that questioning is knowing. On the other side of that fear is yourself waiting. Jung's wisdom echoes through time. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. You've been looking outside for so long, for approval, for validation, for permission to exist. You've been dreaming that if you just help one more person, sacrifice one more time, say yes one more time, you'll finally feel okay. Wake up, look inside, meet yourself. It's time. The people pleaser in you is dying as you read this. Good, let it die. Let it take with it all the false smiles, the automatic yeses, the swallowed truths, the abandoned dreams. Let it die so that you can finally, truly, authentically live. You came here thinking you'd learn how to stop pleasing everyone. But what you've really learned is how to start pleasing everyone. But what you've really learned is how to start pleasing yourself. Not in a selfish way, but in a necessary way. Not in a destructive way, but in a life-giving way. Not in a way that hurts others, but in a way that finally tells the truth. The truth is, you matter. Your needs matter. Your wants matter. Your boundaries matter. Your authenticity matters. Your authenticity matters. Your life matters. Not because of what you do for others, but because you exist. Not because you earn it through service, but because it's your birthright. Not because everyone agrees, but because it's true. Every great spiritual tradition has a version of this truth. Every wisdom teaching points to the same thing. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot love others if you don't love yourself. You cannot be there for others if you're not there for yourself. Your people-pleasing isn't spiritual. It's spiritual bypassing. You're trying to skip the hard work of self-development by losing yourself in others. But the universe has a way of bringing us back to ourselves. Through exhaustion, through resentment, through the slow realization that the life we're living isn't ours. Through moments like this one, where something breaks through the performance and whispers, there's another way. Listen to that whisper. It's your authentic self, patient as eternity, waiting for you to stop the show and come home. It's been there all along, underneath the people-pleasing, underneath the fear, underneath the conditioning. It's the you that existed before the world told you who to be. It's the you that will exist after you drop all the masks. So what are you waiting for? Another decade of depletion? Another year of resentment? Another month of performance? Another week of pretending? Another day of dying? Or are you ready to live? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. You just forgot you had it. Now you remember. Now you know. Now you know. Now you can choose. Choose yourself. Choose truth. Choose boundaries. Choose authenticity. Choose the discomfort of growth over the familiar pain of people-pleasing. Choose to disappoint others rather than continually disappoint yourself. Choose to be disliked for who you are rather than liked for who you're not. Choose to finally, after all this time, stop pleasing everyone and start being someone. You're someone. The only someone you were ever meant to be. The world doesn't need another people pleaser. It needs you, the real you, the messy, imperfect, boundary-having, no-saying, authentically living you. The you who knows that true kindness comes from wholeness, not depletion. The you who understands that the greatest gift you can give others is your own authenticity. Because when you show up as yourself, you give others permission to do the same. When you honor your boundaries, you teach others to honor theirs. When you stop the performance, you create space for real connection. When you choose authenticity over approval, you change not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. This is the revolution Jung was pointing to. Not a revolution of grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but the quiet revolution of becoming yourself, of stopping the endless performance and starting the real show, the one where you're both the audience and the star, the writer and the actor, the critic and the creator. Your life is waiting. Your real life. The one where you wake up without dread. The one where you say what you mean. The one where you give from fullness, not emptiness. The one where you connect from authenticity, not desperation. The one where you finally get to be yourself. All it takes is one moment of choice. One moment of saying no more. One moment of choosing yourself over the endless, impossible task of pleasing everyone else. This is your moment. Take it.